Good day. Thank you for tuning in to this primary election candidate forum for Legislative District 22. I'm sorry about that. This forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County and TCTV. The League is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of the citizens in their government. The League registers new voters, studies issues, and advocates for its positions with the legislature. Despite its name, the League is open to both men and women of voting age. I'm Mary Moore, and I'll be from the League, and I'll be moderating this session. The candidates for Legislative District 22 Position 1 are Lori Dolan, Renda Straub, Franklin Edwards, and Karen Johnson. For this forum, the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I'll ask them questions in alternating order. The person first asked the question will have 2 minutes to respond, followed by 1 minute from each of the other candidates. There will be 1 minute for closing statements at the end of our session. We'll begin with the opening statements from the candidates, and we'll begin today with Lori Dolan.
Great, thanks, Mary. First of all, thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. It's a great community service, and I appreciate it. My name's Lori Dolan, and I hope to be your next representative for Position 1 in the 22nd LD. I come from 30 years of public education experience in Spokane, where I started out teaching first grade. And I grew up in a family in Spokane that was a middle-class family. We didn't have enough money to take family vacations, but we had food on the table, heat in the house, clothes on our back. And so when I was 21 years old and opened my door to 60 little first graders, they were the poorest little first graders in the city of Spokane and some of the poorest in the state of Washington. So at the age of 21, I learned early on what income inequality was all about. And I was not only their teacher, I was their social worker, I was their nurse, I was the person working with nonprofits to try to get scarce resources to their families. To give you an idea of what that was all about, we had our class picture taken. And when we got the class picture back a week and a half later, what we realized is we didn't know the names of a couple of kids in that class picture because they had been in their homes for such a short time because they couldn't make the rent, they couldn't pay for the heat, that they moved and we couldn't remember their names. In 2005, almost 12 years ago, Chris Gregoire hired me to come to Olympia. I had retired from the Spokane Public Schools, and she hired me to come be her director of policy. So I'm actually the only person running for this office that's had 4 years of legislative experience on behalf of the governor. And with both of our representatives leaving the House of Representatives, it would be really nice to have somebody there with experience. I look forward to telling you more about myself, and thank you so much for having us here.
Renda.
Thank you. I'm Renda Iris Straub. I've served on the Olympia City Council and the Thurston County Planning Commission. I have a degree in chemical engineering, which I use as an environmental consultant to help businesses reduce pollution. I'm running for this position because I enjoy public service and I think I can make a difference. Washington State has the most regressive tax system in the nation. It is contributing to income inequality and has created a structural budget deficit. State revenue as a share of state economy is dropping further every year. In early 2012, the state Supreme Court ordered the legislature to meet the constitutional requirement to fully fund basic education. For 6 sessions, they tried to do it without reforming our tax system. The result has been that every program progressive voters care about has been cut. Environmental protection, social safety nets, safe infrastructure, and of course, we are still not funding smaller classroom sizes or raising teacher pay. As a mother of 4, grandmother of 3, and small business owner, I strongly oppose increasing the tax burden on working families and small businesses.
Franklin?
Hi, I am Franklin Edwards. I'm a union carpenter. I've been a union carpenter for now 25 years. Growing up, I grew up with, when my mother and father divorced, I grew up with a single mom, me and my brothers, and I understand the hardships it is for people when you're living on assistance, because my mother had to when we were younger. So I do understand that burden, and I understand that even the smallest fees can hurt these families. So I come from that part. And growing up, I understand what it is to live paycheck by paycheck also. And I've completely lost my mind, but that's all right. I went blank. Anyhow, Franklin Edwards, State House Representative, Position 1. I appreciate your support. You can always find me on Facebook or on my website. Thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you. Breathe deeply. Karen.
Mary,
You're
thank
open.
you for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for the work that the League of Women Voters does in Thurston County. My name is Karen Johnson, and I am running for Position 1 in Legislative District 22 because it is time, now is the time, for an authentic, progressive voice in our state legislature. I had the pleasure of leading a grassroots effort this past year around changing one of our state laws. And in that process, somewhere along the line, I felt like a mama bear. I don't have the pleasure of my colleagues here to have birthed any children, never been pregnant, but I certainly have mothered many. And when I saw that the democracy in the democratic process seemed to have been removed, and perhaps even from public office was removed, and more importantly to me, that the voice of the people was not included, valued, and heard, it became quite apparent to me that it's time to step up, step forward, and move forward in being that voice for the people. I am committed to connecting with you, hearing you, listening to your concerns, and ask for your vote to be in the House, send me to the House, so that the voice of our community, those who live in Ledge District 22, can be heard, no matter who you are. I commit to governing with liberty and justice for all. And you know, I still am naive enough to believe that we must have a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And who are the people? We are the people. Whether we are Democrat, Republican, Independent. We are the people, whether we're in public service or in private sector. We are the people, whether we're unemployed, overemployed, or as Renda said, in the most regressive tax system that there is. It's time to make sure that people have food on their table, clothes on their back, and a roof over their head. And I want to be that voice for you, representing you, so that we really do have an opportunity for abundant life, liberty without oppression, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you very much. Now, if the four of you will have patience with me, I will read a statement from Donald Austin, who cannot be with us today. Donald says, "The people of District 22, I'd like to say I'm sorry I could not attend. I was made a change in my schedule. Please accept this written statement in my stead. As a state representative, it would be my duty to pass legislation that is in the best, that is done in the by hearing from the people. So know that my door would always be open. And I look to see the cities of District 22 operating in a way that is best for our people. Having lived in 3 states and in both rural and city areas, I have gained perspective. It is my goal to get government funding to where it needs to be and to keep everyone in our area, and that can only happen with your help. Thank you for supporting me." So let's start with the questions. Oh, goody, goody, my favorite part. The League spends a lot of time on these questions, a lot of time and thought and so on. So we'll start with you, Lori.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes to respond, and then each one of you will have 1 minute. Clear?
Got it.
Good. So, what do you consider to be balanced and fair taxation for Washington State's citizens?
So right now, Washington really does have the most regressive tax in the state, in the United States. The problem is the people who live in poverty in Washington State spend more of their money on taxes because we have a sales tax than the people who are very wealthy in Washington State. If I go in and buy a bottle of wine and I'm making $15,000 a year, I'm paying the same sales tax on that wine as someone who's making $150,000 a year. So it's regressive. It's not fair to the poor people in our state. And by funding our state just on sales taxes, we don't have enough money to do all of the operating costs to run a state. K-12 education is a great example. The McCleary decision's coming due. The Supreme Court is saying to the legislature, you have got to fund your definition of K-12 education. But there's not enough money in the state budget to fund that definition. K-12 is in the middle of the state budget right now like this big gorilla because it's the paramount duty of the state, and it's eating up all the other critical services. And the legislature's tried very, very hard to find little pots of money where they could fund K-12, but it's not nearly enough. I really do think we have got to start looking more towards a progressive income tax. I know it's been tried before. I am willing to spend the next chunk of my life trying it again. I think it's got to be both political as well as a legislative fix. I am going to work on both sides of that equation. It's got to be political because there's a lot of union members, the Washington Education Association, the Federation of State Employees. They've both endorsed me. I've talked to both of them about this idea. I think we need to run an initiative, something along the lines of pay ourselves first, because I don't think the average taxpayer out there knows that whatever they pay on a state income tax, they deduct from their federal income tax. So really, they would not be paying more money. And that's what I plan to do if I'm elected as your representative.
Brenda, your response?
Thank you. The question was what sort of fair taxes do I support? And the answer is I support a progressive income tax. I support a capital gains tax on over $50,000 in earnings per couple. And I support changing the way we collect B&O tax so that it's not so burdensome on small business. Right now, it's based on gross receipts. That's all the money coming in the door, regardless of your operating costs. And I want to change it to have it collected on profits. Our current system is simply unacceptable. Our state treasurer estimates that meeting the Supreme Court order to fully fund basic education under our current system would require that we increase sales tax by 1%, that we add 15% to the B&O tax paid by businesses, and that we nearly triple the state share of property tax. It's time for tax reform, and I will be a leader on the issue of instituting a state income tax.
Thank you. Franklin, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I got it. For a while, I've been in favor of a value-added tax. After speaking with a few people and looking at it, it is a little more regressive than I would like to see. So I do definitely support Lori's idea on our progressive state income tax. Second, I believe we need to get rid of the B&O tax, and there's a lot of stuff that Brenda also likes that I like in that tax structure that she's talking about. And then a lot of things that people forget about is in the construction industry and in the working trades, misclassification of workers is a huge thing where we're losing tons of tax dollars also. We need to continue to fund our labor and industries to make sure that they have the money and the manpower to continue to investigate these things. That way, we can get that income back. We're losing billions of dollars a year in that industry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Karen, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
All right.
There's the camera.
What do you consider to be a balanced and fair taxation for Washington State's citizens? That is a statement taken from the Constitution.
That's what I thought your question was. And my idea of a balanced and fair taxation for Washington citizens is one where we have taxation with representation, as opposed to one that is without. It seems to me, though, this is a sticky wicket. And looking at a democratic state without an income tax, in my mind, is an oxymoron. It is the first place where I've lived that has been a blue state and no income tax. So that leads me to believe that perhaps the citizens of this state don't really want an income tax, because if they did, then we would have one. And as I was thinking about this, certainly all of my colleagues at the table have wonderful ideas, yet I think about this a little differently in terms of my idea of a balanced and fair taxation for citizens. And I think about what if perhaps we were able to work on the economy and making sure that people were able to make the money so that they could purchase items for a sales tax, as well as buy homes that contribute to the excise tax, and we'd be good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the second question, and Renda will start. You will have 2 minutes to respond, the rest of you 1 minute. The question to you is, the next session of the legislature has the difficult job of fully funding basic education for our students. How do you plan to do this, regardless of the ongoing committee reports?
Regardless of the ongoing committee reports.
There have been 3 committee reports, to my best knowledge, thus far. Everybody constantly trying to plan how to do it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The way I will do it is by being a leader on the issue of tax reform. I'm over here. Thank you. I'm not a TV personality.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
There,
Oh, there.
the 7.
I had the
7.
right place in the first time. Okay,
I'm sorry, Brenda.
can I start again?
Yeah.
Thank you. The way I will do it is by being a leader on progressive tax reform. And by that I don't mean increase taxes, I mean reform the way we collect taxes, which will mean increasing for some people, but it will mean decreasing for other people. What we need in the legislature is not more hand-waving and happy talk about funding education. What we need is real solutions, and that requires leadership. I know it won't be easy. Some people are under the impression that our state our state constitution forbids an income tax. In fact, it does not. What it says is all taxes on property have to be collected equally. And in the 1930s, the Supreme Court issued a 5-4 decision that income tax was property. It's time for that to be challenged. I think our current Supreme Court, which has issued a very strong message to the state legislature that they must fund basic education, might issue a different ruling than what the court in the 1930s issued. And I want to get that challenge before them. That's why I'm the only candidate seated here who has endorsed the Opportunity for Olympia initiative to create the first municipal income tax. I'm working for that. I'm carrying petitions for it. It's time to challenge this in court so that we can have the latitude we need to truly reform our system. Thank you.
Very fine. Franklin.
And can I have you repeat the question one more
You
time,
bet.
please?
The next session of the legislature has the difficult job of fully funding basic education for our students. How do you plan to do this, regardless of the ongoing committee reports?
Okay. Granted, first off, we do have to work on our tax structure so we can make sure we have the income that we need. But at worst case scenario at this point, with our increased tax revenue coming up, if we completely quit growing the rest of our government and just use the rest of our increase, we could almost be there in this next session. I love you.
Sorry.
But that's all right. That would be my belief, but yes, we definitely need to increase our tax revenue and get better sources. And once again, we need to close and help L&I so we can get all that revenue from the construction and trades industries that we're losing. That would also help. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
The way I plan to fully fund basic education is by doing 3 things. 1, listening. A lot of people, a lot of brains have been working on this issue for quite a while and haven't come up with a solution. I plan to listen. I plan to learn as much as I can about the various ways that we can fully fund basic education, as well as live out and fund those other areas that we value for human life, as well as to step up to the plate and lead a bipartisan effort so that we can come to an approach that benefits not our political party, but rather our children.
Thank you. Lori.
So I would love to come up with some magical answer that would make money appear in the state budget by January. But the reality is I don't think that's possible. I think the best we can do the next session is to get another plan in place to actually bring money in, because there's no way to arrive there in January and start having people send us more money the second week of January. Laws have to be passed, it's got to be thought through. I mean, we've tried to use B&O taxes, capital gains taxes, sin taxes. That's all nibbling around the edges of how much money we actually need to fund K-12 education and other critical state services. So what the legislature's had to do, because K-12 is the paramount duty of the state, they've had to take money from, mental health services, from homelessness services, from DOC services. They've had to cut salaries of state employees, which means we're at risk of losing more state employees. So we have got to get an increased revenue into the state budget. That can't happen in January, but I promise you I will spend the next chunk of my life working my hardest to make that happen. Thank you.
Well, fine. Very good. Very nice. Thank you all. Our third question, and this will go to Franklin. You have 2 minutes, the rest of you 1. The third question is, what role do you think the legislature should play, if any, in the regulation of oil and coal transport across our state?
Well, we definitely have to control part of it, mainly because if we have, like we just recently had over on the other side, if we have any of the oil or any contaminants go into our sound, that would be an economic catastrophe for our state. I mean, the sound is a great resource for recreation and for income and for the taxes that we so desperately need for our education system. So yes, I think we do need to place in some rules and regulations for this. But what we really need to concentrate on is more renewable energy in our state, so we're not actually having to rely on the coal and the oil industry. Thank you.
Very good. Karen?
Mary, that's a good question. As I think about the role that the legislature should play, if any, in regulating oil and coal transport across the state, I can only say a listening role. We'd have to hear what the people have to say. We want to make sure that we are able to sustain our planet, to sustain our communities, and we want to be environmentally sound. Yet I don't have an answer because I haven't heard from the people what it is that they expect us to do in this global economy. And so I believe that the role that the legislature and legislators need to play around this issue is to hear, respond, and govern in a way that protects not only the rights of the people, but also the integrity of our planet.
Thank you. Lori?
So part of the joys of getting to work for Governor Gregoire is I got to work on a lot of, I'm looking for the camera, a lot of environmental issues, a lot of climate change issues. And then when I started running for this office, I became good friends with Beth Dolio, who works for Climate Solutions. So I've learned even more about it through my friend Beth. And I think the truth about Washington State is our political advocacy has far outpaced what we've done legislatively in this arena. And it's delightful to watch. So I do think the legislators should start catching up with political advocacy. It changed.
Yes.
Okay. There. Okay, sorry. I think it's time for the legislators to catch up with political advocacy. I also think, besides maybe some legislation to curtail fossil fuels coming across Washington State, I think we also need to have legislation that shows how to shut down the fossil fuel plants that are still in place. So that's something else I would want to work on. I think we need to look at just time for our union workers who are doing coal and fossil fuels to get to green energy. Thank you.
Brenda?
Thank you. So I do think the legislature should play a role in controlling coal and energy transports across the state.
And straight
We're
ahead.
We're all struggling with this camera thing. The argument for increasing transportation for coal and oil across Washington is it's economic development. That's the only argument in favor of it. I think it's the wrong way to go. It's wrong for Washington to move our economy toward a more carbon-rich industries, and we need to go toward green industries. I also don't think that it's safe. I have long experience in studying these issues, and I understand from a technical perspective how risky it is to be moving, especially the high sulfur oil, across the state. Those trains are volatile, and our infrastructure is in disarray. Thank you, Karen. And it's a disaster waiting to happen. So I think the legislature should control it, and I would stand strong against it. Thank you.
Okay. As an ardent environmentalist, thank you very much, all of you. So now, Karen, you get to start with this question. Would you support additional efforts to address mental health care in this state? If so, what form would that take? And if not, why not?
Oh, absolutely. I most absolutely would support addressing mental illness. As a matter of fact, I believe in reinvesting in social services and human rights, period. Fully funding pensions for our employees, as well as developing an economy that honors the dignity of people with mental health, disabilities, our seniors, our elders, and our veterans. And as a former healthcare administrator, what I envision is we have to start bringing in jobs that are healthcare jobs, healthcare-related jobs, or human service jobs. In any hospital, you have a variety of occupations. And if we begin to bring in business solely devoted to helping provide mental health service, intervention, prevention, education, awareness, we could stimulate our economy while meeting the basic needs of those who sometimes, let's just face it, we want to ignore. We can no longer ignore individuals walking on the street, talking to themselves because they can't afford their medication. The police are not social workers. The jail is not a place for mental health people to get care. We must start doing the right thing in the right way because it's the right thing to do. I suspect we need to start expanding our labor market so that we can bring in those healthcare professionals who can earn a livable wage as well as provide the services that those who have mental health need.
Thank you. Lori.
Mind asking the question one more time?
All right. Would you support additional efforts to address mental health care in this state? And if so, what form would that take? And if not, why not?
So I think because of the budget crisis that we've been in since 2008 and the recession, there's a lot of mental health services that went away that have not come back yet. And so part of our problem is trying to get back to ground zero or in the hole with mental health services. So I absolutely would support more funding going to mental health services. I was in public education. I dealt with little kids who had mental health issues. I dealt with little kids who were in the hospital with mental health issues, that were in classrooms with mental health issues. I know how important it is to have social workers and counselors in those classrooms. But every time you put a person any place to help people with mental health issues, think of a dollar sign, because staff requires money. And money is kind of the crux of most of these questions. We do not have enough money in the state budget to both pay for K-12 education and bring mental health up to where it needs to be. We are even sending kids out of Olympia because we can't pay and find foster homes for them in Olympia. So a lot of our very own teenagers are being sent to lock-up kinds of places in other states because we don't have the funding. It's not okay.
Thank you. Brenda.
Thank Mary. So you asked me what additional efforts to address mental care would I
Exactly.
support, and rather than just redefine the problem for you, I will tell you that I would support increasing more state investment, which means, of course, tax reform. Another thing we can do that doesn't involve state money is we can expand our Medicaid program, and there was a bill in the legislature last session to do just that. There is a program in Medicaid called supportive care option for housing, and it only requires that we change our program and accept all of those federal dollars that are available for mental health care and other social services for people who need housing. I think it's tragic that anybody is going homeless because their mental health care needs are unmet. And it's a burden on local government. As a Olympia City Council member, I had to deal with this, and one solution that came up locally was creating Quixote Village, and I was a leader in helping them get the zoning that they needed to make that happen. I urge you to go look at their website. It's a wonderful program for homeless people and has wraparound services, including some mental health counseling.
Thank you. Franklin.
A couple of items on this. Granted, we've got to get the income in so we can actually, help support it, and that we also need to increase the money that we go for our insurance for lower income individuals in our state, because as anybody that knows, most doctors are getting rid of patients that are on our insurance from, that are lower income individuals just because the reimbursement rate is so low. We have to work on that, which means we have to work on our income for the state. We've got to be able to fund our education, fund our mental health, and also we have to fund our medical insurance, because even some individuals in our state that have our medical insurance are unable to find the help they need because so many doctors are just not taking it anymore because of the reimbursement rates. We have to first fix our state's income problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my gracious. All right, we have the next question, and it goes to Lori and the rest of you after her. Several efforts to pass a bill authorizing automatic voter registration for 16-year-olds who receive a driver's license have failed to pass the legislature. Would you favor such a bill? And if not, why not?
I'm sitting here talking to the League of Education, the League of Women Voters. Of course I would favor such a bill. It makes common sense to use when kids come in and get a driver's license, they sign up to vote. Why would we not do this? And it's passed the House, I think, twice and has not passed the Senate yet. So I'm running for the House. I would really vote for this bill, and I know Sam Hunt, who actually just endorsed me last week, would vote for this in the Senate. So yes, I would absolutely vote for that.
Brenda?
Thank you. Yes, I support efforts to expand automatic registration, or to create automatic registration for 16-year-olds. I would create it for everybody. Right now it's an option. When you go and get your driver's license, you have the option to register to vote. Why not just go ahead and register those people to vote? And also, why not remove the waiting period that we have between when a time a person registers and when they can vote? In this modern age of push a button and it's done, why don't we have same-day voter registration? We have wonderful databases which are managed by the Secretary of State, and it interfaces with all the counties in the state. How very easy it would be for somebody to walk up to a polling place, say, this is who I am, here's my ID, check the state database, see where they're registered, boom, switch them over, now you're voting here.
Franklin?
Definitely. I definitely support it because right now it's an option, and like last time when I redid my driver's license and I moved, first they didn't ask me, so I completely spaced it out. So then I had to call. It's a frustrating thing. So yeah, I definitely believe it needs to be automatic to save us all headaches, including our younger youth voters who, I hate to say it, I know when I was 18, I was out running around. You forget to register to vote, and it's very important. Thank you.
Yes, we'll hire you, Franklin, on our voter registration business. So Karen.
On behalf of my foremothers and forefathers who had barriers placed before them to vote, I most definitely support automatic voter registration for 16-year-olds. For how else, what better way is there to get young people involved and aware of their civic responsibility?
Thank you very much. That was concise and good. So, I think it's Renda's turn. Yes. Do you think the legislature could assist in finding a solution to the statewide homeless problem? If so, what form might that take? If not, why not?
Yes, they could find a solution if there was just the will. And the form it takes, once again, is reforming the way we collect our state taxes. There's no money in the budget right now to look at any social programs, however needy they are. And another thing they could do is remove the levy lid that they put on local governments who are really the people most dealing with this. The Iman initiative, I don't remember the number, but it put 1% levy lid on local governments, and that was 1% or the cost of inflation, whichever is lower. And the Supreme Court threw that out as unconstitutional. Governor Gregoire called a special session of the legislature, and they reinstated that as quickly as they could. I was on the Olympia City Council when that happened, and it was not popular in Olympia. That initiative didn't pass in Olympia. It barely passed in District 22. It may not have actually passed at all in all of District 22. I think people here people everywhere, frankly, want to be able to control their own destiny. Local governments need the ability to raise their income to meet their needs, and they can't right now. And I would remove that, and I think it's something that the Republicans in the legislature should agree with, because Republicans, when I hear them speak about their key issues, local control is always one of them. They don't like mandates, so why not get rid of this mandate?
What do you think?
Can you repeat the question one more time for me, please? Thank you.
Do you think the legislature should assist in finding a solution to the statewide homeless problem? And if so, what form might that take?
Yeah, most definitely we need to do what we can. Well, I would like to, granted we got to get our income up, but first I would like, for homeless, I would like to see the homeless families with children helped first. I mean, first and foremost. Should we have something that forces any homeless person to do a program? No. There are some people, not very many, thank goodness. And then also, we also have to work on our mental health. There are some individuals that they don't choose to be homeless, they don't choose to do anything, but because of our mental health issues, they're unable to get the treatment they need. And then once again, the funding of our insurance too, to make sure that people can see the doctors they need to see and be able to get the medication if they need medication, or just sometimes people just need to talk to somebody, and we need to make sure that we have these things in place.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. I'm glad I had a few minutes to think about this, because there are so many things that just impressed me on this one. When I think about the homeless veterans, men and women who were willing to die so that we could go to sleep on the streets, when I'm thinking about victims of domestic violence, when I'm thinking about homeless youth, and it seems to me that perhaps what the legislature might need to do is we probably need to start voting our values. Now, I don't know what that looks like. We've heard time and again we don't have the money. Yet it seems to me that perhaps it is time to have a moral economy where we really do begin to take care of the education of our children and the rights, basic human rights, to a decent home, and perhaps begin to figure out how we can put our money where we say our values are.
Thank you. So I believe it's Renda's. Oh, it's your turn. I'm sorry,
That's
Laurie.
okay.
Oh, yes. Please tell us.
So, Mary, what I do every Thursday is I'm an intake advocate at Sidewalk, working with homeless veterans. And the reason I wanted to do this is that I'm looking for my light again. I don't see anything red.
One.
One.
When there's no red light.
When there's no red, okay. The reason I wanted to work at Sidewalk is I spent years in charge of the homeless program for the Spokane Public Schools. And we had about 800 little homeless kids that we were trying to figure out how to keep their education going, how to find housing for them. So when I heard about Sidewalk, I was fascinated by their strategy. And their strategy is that the best cure for homelessness is a house. Sounds pretty simple. And how they do that, they do it really fast. When people come to see us on Thursday, there's a couple pieces of paper they fill out, and we can actually get them living with a friend or a relative for $250 a month for 1 month. And it's amazing how many people are resilient enough that if you can get them in a home for a month where they can take a shower, cook food, and go find a job, 1 month is all they need to get back on their feet again. For those who need longer, we have some rapid rehousing, and so we can get them into apartments with a little bit of help on the down payment and the first month's rent. So I think strategy, that kind of strategy is something the Washington State Legislature should look at.
Thank you. Brenda, what solutions can you offer to combat?
I believe so.
What solutions can you offer to combat lack of civility in the legislature?
And we're going to slide on over to Mr. Edwards.
I'm going to pass to Franklin because it's his turn.
Oh, Franklin, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Well, it's a confusing day,
it is, but it's a beautiful day outside.
but it's a beautiful day.
That
We
it
have
is.
great questions.
Yes, we do. On the civility within the legislature, a lot of the bickering is just ridiculous. And in all honesty, there are tons of legislation that passes that most people don't know about because they actually do get along on a lot of issues. But of course, on the ones that matter the most to a lot of us, they seem to bicker. What we need to do is we just need to talk. And that's the biggest thing is in order to bring him to your side, like we definitely need some people on our side so we can start getting the Senate stuff done. And in order to do this, we just need to talk. And we got to find that one little thing that we can agree on and then grow from there. But if we bicker and fight and complain and say them and this and that, we're never going to get them to come to our side. As we all know, if someone's complaining about you, you're like, eh. But if they befriend you even just a small bit, you're more apt to listen to them. Thank you.
Now, what would you do, Karen?
First, what I would do to combat the lack of civility in the legislature is to probably encourage my colleagues to read the book, The Lessons That I Learned, Everything I Learned in Kindergarten, number one. And number two, to perhaps think purple. And by that, what I mean is blue, Democrat, red, Republican, red and blue makes purple. And perhaps we might want to lay down partisanism and begin to think about governing for the people. And then third, Aretha Franklin comes to mind. She had a song back in the day, for those of you who remember, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. And I think Franklin nailed it about encouraging us to listen and hear each other, to understand that you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable, and first and foremost, and finally, honoring people. Because we're there to represent the people, and what good is it if we lack civility and then the people suffer?
Thank you. Lori?
So what I do is I build lifetime relationships, and I think when you get to know somebody, it's hard to dislike somebody. So that's what I try to do. I get to know people, I find common ground with them. I come from Spokane, Washington. I grew up with a lot of the Republican representatives that are sitting up on the Hill here in Olympia. I know them, I grew up with them, I know how to talk to them, and I've spent a lifetime doing just that. And so I think it's that skill set. I've been in public service for 34 years. If you Google my name, you'd be hard-pressed to find any example of me ever being less than gracious when I'm working on really complex issues. So it's building the relationship, and I think once you have a trusting relationship in place, you can take people places that they might not have gone without that. I think the other thing is telling stories. I think oftentimes a well-placed story about a little kid who didn't have food that sat in my classroom will open people's hearts much more than a chart showing poverty in the state of Washington. So I will use a lifetime of stories to deal with the issues to represent you.
Brenda?
Thank you. Civility grows out of respect. if you respect the person you're talking to on a personal level, you value their personal worth and human dignity, then it's hard to be uncivil to that person. It is hard for that person to be uncivil to you. Just as Aretha Franklin said, I loved your quote. So finding common ground is the first step toward dealing with people who have views that are just so contrary. And we're all Americans. We're all Washingtonians. You can break it down further, and we don't actually start to disagree until you get to a very low level about the issues we're talking about. And I think we all agree, everyone in the legislature agrees that education needs to be funded. Let's find common ground on how that will happen. I think everybody in the legislature agrees that we don't want to increase taxes on working families. Let's find common ground to make that a reality.
Okay, we're here on the last question, and it's Karen's turn. Karen, how would your district and the citizens of Washington State in general benefit from having you in office?
The citizens of Washington State and the people in Legislative District 22 would benefit greatly by having me in office because, first and foremost, they would never ever have to wonder, is this woman playing a game or is she telling the truth? I am committed to being integrous, committed to hearing you, listening to you, and representing your voice, no matter what my opinions may be. I'm committed to working hard for strengthening our schools, working hard for reinvesting in social services, as well as working to ensure that we have an environmentally sustainable economy that respects both working families and the business owners who together create prosperity. You would benefit by having me as your representative because you know that your voice would be included, valued, and heard. I have demonstrated my ability to work across the aisle with Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate to bring forth legislation that was important to many of us. We'd have some fun. You'd benefit in knowing that, above all, I really do believe in governing in such a way that results in liberty and justice for all, not just a few, but all.
Thank you. Lori.
So I'm going to start with education, because with 30 years in K-12 education, I'd be one of the few people sitting in that seat that actually understands it inside and out. I've balanced school district budgets, I've hired teachers, I've had to count class size, I've had to make sure school district budgets work. I've worked for Governor Gregoire, had to make sure state budgets work. So I know the budgeting from both the local level and the state level. Preschool education. When I was policy director, one of the things we started was the Department of Early Learning. That's really critical. Our kids have to get a good start in order to succeed in K-12 education. When I was in Spokane, I was an adjunct professor at Gonzaga University. I know what universities and colleges look like. I taught there when I was getting my PhD. The other thing I bring, I spoke to it in the introduction, is the legislative experience. I think we need somebody representing the 22nd District that actually knows how the legislation process works, and I've done it for 4 years on behalf of the governor. And finally, I am committed to trying to solve our funding crisis. We do not have a spending crisis, we have a funding crisis, and I'd like to work on your behalf trying to solve that.
Thank you. Brenda.
Guessing where to look. There.
Straight ahead.
Straight ahead. The people of District 22 and Washington State would benefit from having me in the legislature because of my experience, my problem-solving skills. I'm a good collaborator, and I'm courageous. My experience serving on the Olympia City Council put me in the level of government closest to the people. I had to own my votes every single week, and I had to work on issues that literally split friend against friend in this city and come through it with a resolution that most people could agree on. That is great training for serving in the legislature where the issues are difficult and the people disagree. I am a trained problem solver because of my engineering degree. They taught me how to look at a complex problem and pick it apart piece by piece and work on the parts that can be solved first, identify the areas that you need more information on, and move ahead. And that's a skill that will be really useful in the legislature.
Thank you. Franklin?
You would benefit by having myself in the State House of Legislature because you would be the best one for the State House Legislature. I mean, I'm an everyday guy, union carpenter, go to work every day. I'm working, 5-6 days a week, anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day. So, at this moment, granted, when I get elected, I'll be in the State House. So, but I will work just as hard at that job also. My door will always be open. Thank you very much.
Very good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our candidate forum. You have one last chance. Each of you gets a minute to make your pitch. So, Lori?
Okay. Well, it's delightful to be here today, too. I'm sorry, are we on 4 now?
No, we're on 1.
1, okay. I am really sorry about this. I would be a much better legislator than I am a follower of cameras. I promise you this. I bring a lifetime of experience to offering my candidacy up to the voters of the 22nd Legislative District. The 30 years in K-12 education, I've always worked in huge systems. When I came here to work for Governor Gregoire almost 12 years ago, the state's a huge system. I was brand new to the job. She was the first person to endorse me because she thanks me for the work I did for her those 4 years. It's those skill sets that I would be bringing to you, and I'm asking for your vote. I promise you that my door would be open and we would have close working relationships to represent you on those votes that are very important to life here in the 22nd District. I thought I could retire, but when I heard Chris Rakedahl was leaving his position, I found that I was just drawn right back to this work. I'm not done yet. I want to give you the next 10 years of my life at least to try to solve these big problems. I ask for your vote. And thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this.
Brenda?
Thank you, Mary, and the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I will provide the kind of leadership needed to create progressive tax reform, and so that everybody in Washington can share the prosperity that some of us at the top income levels are enjoying now. I have been endorsed by the Olympia firefighters and the Lacey firefighters because they know what a good job that I did for public employees when I served on the Olympia City Council. I've been endorsed by Sandra Romero, County Commissioner, because she appreciates both my local service and my strong environmental advocacy. I served on the Thurston County Planning Commission before I was on the Olympia City Council and helped write the Critical Areas Ordinance that preserves public lands, rural lands outside of the cities. I'm a strong, independent-minded woman who knows how to work with people who disagree with me. And I think I am the best person to represent you in the legislature.
Franklin?
Franklin Edwards. I will be your representative, 2016. Oh, sorry, ladies. Anyhow, union carpenter, 25 years now. I'm never held an elected office before. I believe that is to my credit. We've had politicians in office for many years now, and I think we need some new voices, some new ideas in the State House. And we need to bring just the regular working man's perspective to the House floor. Thank you very much.
Karen?
Thank you, Mary. I think I'll wait for camera 4 because I think it's going to come on when I start talking. I'm still on 2. Okay.
There it went.
Having you in my corner means so much to me. The name of my campaign is People for Karen Johnson because Karen Johnson is for the people. I've had the pleasure of going to bat to make sure that our veterans had the money that they need to get the care that they deserved at the federal level. I've had the opportunity to work with legislators at the state level to make sure that people get the services that they need. I am committed to working hard for you, not for me, but for you. You know, there comes a time when really we have to step up, step forward, and be that voice for the people. You know, there's a saying, greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friend. And I call you friend even though I don't know you, because like Lori, I'm committed to giving my life, which has already been the case for the last 18 years when I gave up my career in healthcare, to come to the Pacific Northwest to find out what are the real issues and needs of the people, and have ministered and labored with the people and will continue to do that from a position where perhaps policy can now influence our day-to-day lives. I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Thank you all. That brings us to the end of this forum. Thank you, candidates, and thank you, TCTV and the League of Women Voters of Thurston County for making this forum possible. Viewers out there, we hope that when you vote in the primaries and the general election, the candidates' positions will help you make an informed decision. Please remember to vote. Goodbye.